The World to Come. The Restored Church of God presents David C. Pack, answering life's greatest questions straight from the Bible and announcing the wonderful good news of the world to come.
The book of Revelation speaks of a terrifying great beast to appear at the end of the age. The Bible identifies this beast and warns of his mark while prophesying civilization-shattering events leading to Armageddon. The nations of earth are in confusion. War, famine, disease, poverty, ignorance, civil unrest, and misery are widespread and growing worse. Where are conditions leading and why? The following questions come into view and must be answered. Who or what is the beast of Revelation 13 and 17? Is it a man, a church, a government, an empire? Who is the woman, the great whore of Revelation 17, who rides it? What is the mark of the beast? What is the image of the beast? What about the number 666 associated with the beast? Who is the false prophet often spoken of in conjunction with the beast? When will these things occur? How long must we wait to see these figures appear? Where does the year 2012 fit? How will world trends, conditions, and events spawn the beast's arrival? Why is it so important to correctly identify it with all related prophecies? And how will it affect you? The Bible actually speaks of several different beasts. To understand them all, each must be explained separately. This takes time. The answers will be plain, clear, deeply sobering, and what no one else is telling you. The world is drifting along, sleepy, drunken, and oblivious to what lies ahead. The average person has no idea what the future holds, and many do not care. Few are concerned beyond tomorrow, and fewer still remotely suspect what is coming in our time. God says, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." This series will strip away the confusion, misunderstanding, wrong knowledge, and outright deceit that is now deluding so many who do not know the plain truth of this prophecy. Every day, end-time conditions grow more ominous, and you must understand. This series of broadcasts presents what will happen to governments and nations from now on, and the Bible will be seen to interpret itself. When God's plan, His great overarching purpose, is understood, confusion, mystery, and misunderstanding disappear. Events become clear. The world does not know God. It is unaware of the plan and purpose that He is working out here below. Worldwide disobedience to His laws and rejection of His truths will cause horrible, stupefying plagues to be poured out on a God-hating humanity. But the God of the Bible is a loving God. Before punishment takes place, He always makes certain His watchman sounds the alarm to those in harm's way. Read Ezekiel 33, verses 7 to 9. He wants no one to have an excuse saying, "I didn't know," or "Why didn't you tell me?" It is my responsibility to caution, to warn all who will yet take heed of the seriousness and meaning behind world-shaking events and calamities lying just over the horizon. Historians can only record what has already happened. They cannot see into the future. Yet 1/3 of the Bible is prophecy, history written in advance. God foretells major events before they happen. He wants you to know what the future holds, what lies ahead for the world. Over 80% of Bible prophecy remains unfulfilled. Many major events must yet come to pass. Fearing the world might end in late 2012 or other dates given by self-appointed prophets, millions have become uncertain and frightened about answers to questions that are now filling the airwaves of the world. Conditions in Europe and around the world will soon dictate that a single great authority must be given immense power, unlike anything ever held by one government entity, for a short time. Much is written of the beast and events surrounding its appearance, but little is understood of what the Bible actually reveals about this powerful, dominant, governing system eventually united under two men. Behind the scenes, enormous events are now taking shape. Prophesied world trouble will culminate in events terrifying beyond description. They will soon stun and shake every nation on earth. But get this before continuing. They do not mean the end of the world, and that is crucial to understand in light of the growing number of false prophets, Nostradamus is but one, filled with false thinking, who are trumpeting false dates through use of a false sequence of events leading up to these dates. World history is the study of the rise and fall of empires. But few know why great civilizations ebb and flow, why governments rise and fall, why events move as they do. Most see these things as products of the normal cycle of economics, war, disease, and natural calamities. This thinking is about to change, and in a big way. This broadcast begins the explanation of how and why. For those who may want what is virtually all of what we offer on prophecy in one book, the Bible's Greatest Prophecies Unlocked, A Voice Cries Out, may be ordered. Students of Bible prophecy remain ignorant of its meaning, unable to recognize the speed, sequence, seriousness, and awesome magnitude of events. They just cannot untangle the maze of what happens when, as well as where and to whom and why. This book removes the veil of mystery shrouding God's plan and makes prophecy come alive and reveals what lies ahead for all nations before Christ's return. You can order it at Amazon.com and other online booksellers. Matthew 24, Mark 13, and Luke 21 are parallel accounts of Jesus' greatest prophecy in which he announced the gravest of warnings. In these chapters, including Matthew 25, Christ gives a detailed description of events that will precede his second coming. Each of these chapters adds additional details, filling in the picture of what will happen from here on. Luke's account contains a strong warning to all who live at the end of the age. Christ explains that those who serve God must be careful not to be swept away by conditions that give a false impression of what is happening or coming. Here is how he began. And take heed to yourselves, meaning be careful, lest at any time your hearts be overcharged with surfeiting, that's indulgence, and drunkenness, and cares of this life, and so that day awesome, world-shaking events come upon you unawares. This passage pictures the values and lifestyles of most people. Almost no one is taking heed, and that day will come upon them unawares. Here is how Christ describes the sudden arrival of worldwide cataclysm. Notice, for as a snare shall it come on all them that dwell on the face of the whole earth. Jesus carefully chose this analogy. Snares catch unsuspecting victims who carelessly step into them and find themselves suddenly trapped, often hanging upside down, completely disoriented. This is a graphic picture of what will soon strike the whole world, it says. And these are the words of Christ, not of some doomsday prophet speaking without facts or authority. Here on The World to Come, we follow what is the most basic rule of Bible study. The Bible always interprets the Bible. You will see this. Human opinions are of no worth. But this snare need not catch you or anyone who heeds Christ's words. Calamity will not come without notice to those who are vigilant. Here is what Jesus said to do. Watch you therefore, and pray always, that you may be accounted worthy to escape all these things that shall come to pass, and to stand before the Son of Man. The snare Jesus spoke of will entrap the entire world. Despite his warning, almost no one is preparing for what lies ahead. But by following his instructions, you can escape horrific events foretold to soon slam into civilization like a speeding freight train. But to effectively watch, you must know what to watch for. Otherwise, such watching is useless. It has no value. Many will be deceived, fooled, because they will be watching in the wrong places for the wrong things, or expecting events to occur in a wrong time frame. Understand, the Bible is 1, a history book, 2, a prophecy book, and 3, a book about essential revealed knowledge that man could not otherwise discover for himself. If world history is the study of the rise and fall of past empires, then prophecy is primarily the study of the rise and fall of world empires before they appear. Men cannot discover what the future holds without God revealing it. The beast involves the sudden, in fact explosive, rise of a world empire, and unlike any ever before it. But the rise of certain other empires must be understood before one can grasp the emergence of the final beast. Early world history records little about nations, kingdoms, and empires that may have existed prior to the great flood of Noah's time. However, the Bible does discuss the empires of Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, and various other nations as they came into contact with his people, the nation of Israel, after the flood. The first great empire that God focuses on, both through history and Bible prophecy, is Babylon. It was founded by Nebuchadnezzar in the 600s BC and consisted of multiple nations and regions united under his leadership. King Nebuchadnezzar was perhaps the first great Gentile king, and, now get this, Scripture focuses on this man and his system all the way to the return of Christ. Paralleling this foretelling of the rise and fall of great Gentile empires are prophecies describing the nation of Israel, both ancient Israel and the modern-day nations populated by its descendants. The role of the symbolic beast of Revelation has everything to do with world empires. Many know that it represents Babylon the Great in some way, but are unsure how. And the nature and identity of this wild beast remains shrouded in mystery, even for those who profess to and think that they understand who or what it is. Yet the real truth of how the beast will eventually affect and change the earth will shock you beyond belief. Terrible plagues will strike the disbelieving and unprepared. Notice this blunt, stark warning to all. If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture. The Greek simply means undiluted. This is serious. God is not a respecter of persons, one who plays favorites. He says, if any man worship. Woe to all who remain ignorant of the facts surrounding this awesome prophecy. They will suffer horribly in ways God describes most graphically. There is no room for misunderstanding on this most sober of Bible warnings. I repeat, the Bible speaks of several different beasts. To understand each, it must be explained separately. Revelation 13 speaks of a beast in its first 7 verses. Another beast, ridden by a woman, is described in Revelation 17. Daniel 7 speaks of 4 separate beasts, with a reference to a little horn that appears during the time of the 4th beast. Revelation 13 describes a second 2-horned beast, beginning in verse 11. Also, Daniel 2 describes a giant image of a man composed of 4 separate metals. Relative to most of these descriptions, a specific number of heads, horns, and toes are mentioned. No wonder this subject is so confusing. It does require thorough explanation, and God must supply the clues. the critical knowledge to unlocking all of the above terms. The Bible foretells a series of catastrophic events which involve 7 trumpets to occur immediately prior to Christ's return. The 7th trumpet fills up what the Bible calls the wrath of God. This last trumpet is comprised of the 7 last plagues, also called bowls or vials, which punish a rebellious, sinning mankind. 7 angels pour out the vials of the wrath of God upon the earth. The 7 trumpet plagues are not to be confused with the 7 last plagues. These 2 sets of plagues are separate. The Bible depiction of how this occurs is most graphic. This last generation is so vile, so corrupt and contemptuous that God will subject them to the worst punishment of all time. Jesus compared these days to that of Noah's time. Notice, but as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage until the day that Noah entered into the ark. How did God view Noah's time? And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. We are very close to that time again. When the first vial is poured out upon the earth, the Bible states, there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image. All those who received this plague belong to a universal false church-state system. The second plague is equally terrible. And the second angel poured out his vial upon the sea, and it became as the blood of a dead man, and every living soul died in the sea. In the next 3 plagues, the rivers and fountains turn to blood. The sun becomes so hot that men are scorched with fire, and darkness and pain become unbearable. Yet even after these plagues, men continue to, it says, blaspheme the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, and repented not of their deeds. I have heard endless theories about what the beast's mark may be. It is a subject of almost unending opinion and has produced a veritable cottage industry of speculation, debate, and disagreement. For almost every person who reads the mark, another idea is born. Most have come to think it is a computer microchip that will be placed in the forehead and right hand, and possibly by the year 2017. This silly theory misses the whole point, and later in the series the mark will be explained. This is because all attempts to explain the mark, the image of the beast, and who will receive the plagues are fruitless unless one first establishes who or what the beast is. We must start with the Bible description of the beast. Comparing Revelation 13:17 and Daniel 7 with Daniel 2 brings full understanding of the scope and magnitude of the beasts and the system they represent. Numerous Old Testament scriptures also refer to them, but these chapters are the most critical to understand. Combined, they explain a staggering and profoundly sobering prophecy about latter-day events that will affect all humanity in your lifetime. Revelation 17, verses 8 and 9, describe a beast that ascends out of a bottomless pit and is ridden by a woman. Verse 12 shows that this beast involves 10 kings who shall receive power and unite to bequeath it to a leader who will take the role of the final beast and Antichrist system. This will be the 7th and last short-lived resurrection of the Holy Roman Empire, arising right now in the heart of Europe. It is critical you understand that a United States of Europe is coming, and in fact now lies just ahead. When it appears, the entire world will stand in shocked amazement. Let's establish and then prove these stunning prophecies. It is vital that you grasp what they mean. Revelation 13 contains a symbolic description of the beast and a description of a second beast with 2 horns. The first beast represents the Roman Empire, a political kingdom. The two-horned beast represents the headquarters of an influential false prophetic woman that controls the first beast. This chapter also describes both the beast's image and mark. The Apostle John recorded the book of Revelation during his exile on the island of Patmos. But what he wrote is actually the revelation of Jesus Christ, not John. He wrote what he saw in vision, offering significant detail in his description of the beast. Let's read. And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. These first 1.5 verses of chapter 13 contain a physical description of what the beast looks like. This will be important to remember. But the next 3.5 verses tell more about the nature, the source of power, size, scope, and conduct or behavior of the beast. The following verses give important clues for later examination. These clues go far in telling us exactly who or what the beast is. Now read. And the dragon gave him his power, and his seat, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast, and they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. Many mistakenly equate this last description of the beast with the papacy. They fail to recognize that history is filled with accounts of Europe's citizenry worshiping the Roman Empire and its emperors. Here is what one source states, quote, the worship of the head of the empire, the emperor. In a word, the Roman government was not only wonderfully organized, everyone was required to join in the worship of the emperor because he stood for the majesty and glory of the Roman dominion. All were obliged as good citizens to join in the official sacrifices to the head of the state as a god. Notice that the question was asked, who is able to make war with him? It would not be difficult to make war with the papacy because they only have a tiny group of ceremonial guards around the Vatican. But making war with the Roman Empire was always most difficult. Also, the papacy as an institution has lasted far longer than 42 months, or the prophetic fulfillment of this period, 1,260 years. See Ezekiel 4, verses 4 to 6, and Numbers 14, verse 34. So this is not a picture of the papacy or Vatican. John's description of the beast's appearance leaves many questions. Perhaps the 3 biggest are, 1, is John's description that of a literal creature? 2, does it represent a single individual, a kind of Antichrist, Superman world dictator? And 3, or does it picture something else? These all require answers. First, there is no living creature on earth that this could be describing literally. If there is, who's ever seen it? Where does it live? How did it come to be alive? How could 3 known creatures, a leopard, a bear, and a lion, come together in the worship of a dragon when there are no real dragons? This passage does not remotely describe any known animal on earth. Obviously, it must represent something other than a literal creature. Second, regarding whether it is some kind of human being, Superman or otherwise, similar questions arise. What kind of person looks like this? What man looks like a leopard, has feet like a bear, and the mouth of a lion, and has 7 heads, 10 horns, and 10 crowns on the horns, and comes out of the ocean? Again, the obvious answer is no one. This depiction cannot possibly refer to either a literal man or creature. This leaves the third possibility. There is only one other possible explanation for the beast. It must be symbolic. Many recognize this, so it has produced an endless stream of human interpretations for what the beast and other descriptions in Revelation represent. But it is useless to try to assign an arbitrary meaning to such graphic symbolism. If the Bible does not explain who or what the beast is, then its identity is subject to every possible human interpretation. No one would have a right to claim to be more correct than anyone else. Many others attempt to understand the beast, but then give up in hopeless frustration, thinking that no proper explanation and meaning of this or of the other two beasts is even possible. In other words, if God does not reveal the meaning and identity of the beasts, then either anything goes, or one can rightly conclude that there is no correct explanation, and this prophecy simply cannot be understood. So then, unless one is to give up or choose to rely on human interpretation, we must accept a basic principle. What John records in Revelation is written in symbol. While he speaks in plain language, it is impossible to understand his symbols by merely rereading various passages again and again until their meaning suddenly comes clear. Since John uses many symbols, we need to be able to understand the many actual events that these symbols represent. Otherwise, we will not know what is being described. Therefore, John's description must contain sufficient clues that can be deciphered by examining other verses in the Bible. Only God can interpret what he inspired John to record. I repeat yet again, one of the most basic rules of Bible study is to always let the Bible interpret the Bible. This is most true of the book of Revelation. Since it is God who inspired Scripture, he must always interpret its meaning. Now let's understand another related principle. Two New Testament passages, Mark 4, verses 10 to 12, and Matthew 13, verses 10 to 15, hold the all-important key to understanding how Christ, the one who is the real revelator behind the apocalypse, teaches and interprets. In both passages, he explained that he spoke in parables so that his true servants would understand him, but others would not. Carefully read. And when he was alone, they that were about him with the 12 asked of him the parable. And he said unto them, Unto you it is given to know the mystery of the kingdom of God, but unto them that are without, all these things are done in parables, that seeing they may see and not perceive, and hearing they may hear and not understand, lest at any time they should be converted, and their sins should be forgiven them. Note exactly what Christ said. Only his followers can understand his real meaning. Others might think they do, but they cannot. Christ never leaves his servants in the dark about matters he wants them to understand, but he does record them in ways that keep them hidden from the view of all others. God wants you to understand, but only if you are willing to accept his interpretation. Before this series is over, you will understand the beast of Revelation like few others. There's not enough time in a single broadcast to cover all there is about the subject of the beast. Other broadcasts will answer more of the questions raised in this one. In the meantime, read this thorough booklet, Who or What is the Beast of Revelation? It will answer questions, all the questions that might be in your mind. Read it carefully. It is like none other written on the subject. Until next time, this is David C. Pack saying goodbye, friends.
This program was made available by Restored Church of God members and donors from around the globe. Explore our vast library of literature and other World to Come programs, which are all made available free of charge. To learn more or to find a local congregation, contact us to receive a personal response from a minister.